Hey, Howard.
In case you need a lawyer, here's my business card. I'm attorney Howard Ankin.
Oh, hey, Howard.
If you or someone you know has been hurt at work, Ankin Law can get the medical bills paid, the lost wages reimbursed,
Oh, hey, Howard.
and the compensation you deserve.
Hey, Howard.
We're one of the largest filers throughout the state of Illinois of workers' compensation claims. We're here to help. Call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal, that's Ankin Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margalus, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Wednesday night, February 25th, 2026, as we record this new show. The Chicago White Sox continue to play well this spring. They are 4-2 and have scored 42 runs in their first 6 games in the Cactus League. The White Sox will be busy this weekend as they have 5 games in 4 days with some split squad action going on Friday that will feature the first appearance this spring for left-handed starting pitcher Noah Schultz. But this weekend could also feature the last appearances of spring for a while at least for Munetaka Murakami, who along with Kyle Teal, Sam Antonacci, Sir Anthony Dominguez, and Curtis Mead, they are leaving camp this weekend to join their respective countries' WBC squads. With Team Japan looking to defend their World Baseball Classic title, Murakami could be gone until, well, beyond St. Patrick's Day. However, it's real game action, and it's real action watching Murakami play first base defensively. So how does he look at that position so far in camp? We'll get that report and more from Glendale, Arizona, as James Fegan will join the podcast later on. Also, today is Jerry Reinsdorf's 90th birthday. I'll ask Jim Margalus what would be a good birthday present for the chairman. As I just mentioned, the White Sox are playing good baseball this spring. Manager Will Venable still wants his players to focus on practicing good habits in their preparation, believing that aspect will help drive more wins during the regular season. One tool that Venable and White Sox coaches are hoping to utilize more is video, not just for watching pitchers and help out the hitters, but as our James Fegan asked, Venable using it for base running and defense.
Talking to Jersey, he was talking about using video for about first steps and pre-pitch stuff for infield as well. Is that just kind of a larger focus this year of kind of utilizing that tool with all your defensive work?
It really is. Yeah, that was intentional coming into this. To be able to give these guys instant feedback, as a learning tool, I think creating awareness around what they're doing is something that, is really helpful where you get to see your swing all the time. The pitchers get to see their pitch mechanics, but we don't get great video on defensive stuff. So just be able to create awareness and be able to give instant feedback to make some of these adjustments we think is impactful.
This week also saw the first appearance from Shane Smith, who, despite Venable not officially declaring him to be the opening day starter for the Chicago White Sox, Smith is probably the best choice to be the White Sox opening day starter in Milwaukee. Smith is quickly becoming one of my favorite White Sox players to listen to talk about their craft. He shared what it was like pitching in a game situation again since last season.
It's good to get back out there again. I think I did a decent job filling up the zone, and I think winning the race to 2K and then getting a walk is frustrating, but other than that, I think I filled up the zone pretty good.
Now, Smith's command wasn't great. In his 1 2/3 innings of work, he allowed 2 hits, he hit 2 batters, he walked 1, and didn't strike out anyone. He was asked if it was just jitters of returning back to game action.
Yeah, I think it's nerves, it's mechanics, it's moving at game speed for the first time in a while. Obviously, if you guys remember last year, my first outing was pretty similar. So, I'm not taking it too seriously. Obviously, you want to do well. There's things to work on, but good to get out there, get that out of the way, and it's easier to have a diagnostic of like, hey, what does moving at game speed look like, and how do we fix it?
What's tough for Smith is looking at how his 2025 season ended. If you remember, he was flirting with a no-hitter on the season's final day in Washington, and then taking time off to rest during the offseason only to try and ramp up for a new season. Smith is still new to being a full-time starting pitcher in the major leagues. And he shared what his focus is for this spring camp.
I think it's tough when your last 2 outings of the year are really strong and you feel really good, because then you take a couple weeks off of throwing and everything kind of feels out of whack again. So I think I'm just trying to find that feel from the last 2 starts and bring it out here again. I think it's going to take time and making sure I put the effort to where I need it to be, not how hard can I throw in spring or is my stuff the nastiest it's ever been. It's not really what I'm trying to do, but obviously it'd be cool if it was. But I think, knowing my stuff's good enough, it's just knowing how I move and what creates the best, outcome once the ball leaves my hand. That's all I'm really trying to do.
Don't worry about Smith's velocity early in spring training. He's not throwing at 100% effort.
I mean, I prefer not to throw 99 right now. If it didn't take a physical toll, it'd be cool, but it does. So, I think a lot of it's just, get the feel for the game, get the speed of the game, the speed of my body moving, and I'm sure it'll come.
It is a different feel for Smith this camp. Last year, he was the Rule 5 guy trying to prove to the White Sox that he merited a spot on the 26-man roster. And as I mentioned, now he's likely their opening day starter for the 2026 season. That comes with a different type of pressure for Smith this spring.
I think the pressure on yourself is different. Last year, every single day mattered so much. And I don't think it's different. I think every day still matters, obviously, but it's just, what do I want to work on today that's going to set me up better for, maybe 5 weeks from now, 6 weeks from now, rather than my next outing has to be perfect in order to do it. I'm all about, 1% a day or what percentage you want to put it at, but just trying to get better each day. Some days it looks different, some days it looks the same, but that's really all I'm trying to do.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
Joining me now are Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margalus. And hello, gentlemen. The World Baseball Classic participants are leaving camp this weekend with the tournament starting next week. A lot of eyes will be, of course, on Munetaka Murakami for White Sox fans. Friend of the podcast, Steven Nelson, will be calling the games for Fox and Pool C action. So we'll get some reliable analysis from Steven and his thoughts about Murakami playing for Team Japan. But for Munetaka Murakami, James, we know that he is a slugger. But another thing that we have to focus on for this upcoming White Sox season is how is Murakami defensively at first base, seeing as how he played mostly at third base over in Japan. From your point of view, watching him in infield drills and a couple of spring training games, how does Murakami look defensively at first base?
What's Japanese for he's working on it? Theoretically, like any third base, first base conversion, like there should be the range and hands to make that transition eventually. I think like the bones are there. It's just like he's clearly like, given like scouting him, he seemed like such a clear, like this guy is going to move to first base, especially since like his bat is like what's the carrying thing, especially like in Japan. You'd think like if he was just spent his whole career there that he would move to first base and wouldn't be like a big thing about it. But there's like nuances that he's clearly like getting used to, like his feed to Davis Martin today or Wednesday, whenever you're listening to this, was like low, and Martin had to do this like weird little athletic dance to haul it in and touch on the bag like at that time. And like he said, like Murakami apologized to him about it. Like when I watched him work with like Jershly and Phil Nevin, he's still kind of getting used to like the timing of like stretching out his glove and stretching out like his back leg, like in tandem with one another. It's just not something he's had to like, all these things that you see first basemen do and don't think very much about, like he just doesn't have a ton of reps on. So like he seemed green there, but he hasn't seemed like, he can't play first base in the way like Yermin or Mercedes couldn't play first base, where it's just like it wasn't like in the toolkit to do like the things athletically he's asked to do there. It's just like, it just seems like a lot of like unfamiliarity, which is like another reason why he's like, I want to play every day here. I want to stay extra here. I have like all these things I'm adjusting to. I don't think it's like he doesn't have the physical ability to be good there, especially since like, as I've commented before, he like looks like he's in great shape. He's as much as like he's this accomplished slugger who has this long track record. He's only 26. Like I don't think it's something that's beyond his skill set. It's just not in his wheelhouse as far as familiarity right wise. Well, so if his StatCast like OAA was bad for the first month or the first 2 months or the first half of the season, and they can set up fainting couches for it, but I wouldn't necessarily like be. It could happen, but I don't think it necessarily be like this guy's just a DH responsible, just because everything just seems very new for him.
Got it. Okay, so that means, Jim, when we are watching games next week in the World Baseball Classic, it seems like we really have to pay attention to on how Murakami's playing defensively, which I know, I guess from one perspective, you like him to stay at spring training camp if he's still so green to the position based on James's description. But on the other side, there's so much riding on these games, and Team Japan they're the defending champions of the World Baseball Classic. There's a lot riding on this team and for their country. So I almost prefer that Murakami is thrown into the fire here in the World Baseball Classic at first base, but it is something to pay attention to when we start watching games next week.
Yeah, I can see, some of the plays that he's been involved in. You wonder if it's like a speed of the game thing in terms of whether it's batted ball or just maybe rushing actions because they don't quite come natural to him yet. And so going to the World Baseball Classic and playing in games with stakes, the game shouldn't slow down any. Like maybe perhaps the batted balls aren't as sizzling over there, but with stakes, with errors being a lot more costly for games that count, I'm sure there's like the same amount of pressure and the same perhaps forces on the internal time clock that do make plays a little bit more complicated for him than they would for experienced first basemen. So yeah, I think it should be enlightening. I think pretty much I'll be watching all of his actions, every play that he's involved in, with offensively, defensively. Just because we're still in the learning phase about him. But I guess the good news is for him that like having Lenyn Sosa preceding him at first base and like forgetting to stand on the bag and learning like, some things are even more foreign to people who are getting used to first base. And so far, like he's been standing where he needs to stand. Like check that box. I think is a good move for him. But yeah, it's going to be fun just to watch all parts of his game evolve. And yeah, you'd like to see it in Arizona, ideally in a White Sox uniform, and understand it in that context. But given the stakes, especially for an international team that prides itself on its showings in the World Baseball Classic, I don't think it can hurt.
Speed of the game is a great point because like that's what something Murakami has said, like everything here is faster, which is what I anticipated, but I'm still adjusting to it. So like he can know consciously like I'm supposed to stretch my mitt and leg like in tandem with each other, but that's a different thing when it feels like you're rushing because you're still adjusting to like the speed of every play. So yeah, I think that's a perfect point to put on it because that's what he raised himself as an issue.
And Venable has mentioned, though, this upcoming season, and for our podcast listeners that are avid fantasy baseball players, this will be really intriguing to everyone in fantasy baseball world because it does sound like Venable still wants to play Murakami, even with the White Sox, on days at third base when Miguel Vargas needs a break over at third, that we could still see Murakami play third base. So it seems like there's three roles for Murakami this upcoming season, James, if I'm hearing correctly. Like, primarily he's the first baseman, but we're also going to see Murakami days at DH and also at third.
They say like he's very like he feels like that's his natural position, so he wants like a chance to show he can do it. I don't know like how much we're committed to like we're going to allot you a game a week. I think it's more like, hey, yeah, if we have a need, we're not going to rule you out, or we're going to give you a chance, or we're certainly going to get reps in practice throughout spring. I don't know if it's like committed to like you're going to be in a regular rotation for this. I don't think it's quite like his passion the way like, if you told him, hey, if you sign with us, you can't go to WBC because you need to get adjusted to playing first base, where I just think he wouldn't have signed here. So it's like almost like not even worth like a hypothetical because he wouldn't do it. But I think it's like he wants to do this. He works his ass off. Let's respect it by like giving him reps there and saying like, yeah, if you show that if we think you look good or think you look passable and we have a need, you'll be there. It's just like creating a relationship of mutual respect rather than saying like he's going to play 2 times a week over there or something like that.
Yeah, this will be a focus when we start doing our position previews in March, podcast listeners, because Miguel Vargas graded very well defensively at first, not so great at third. Vargas really wants to prove that he could stick at third base, and Murakami wants to prove that he could stick in the infield and play defensively, and he's just not a full-time DH. So that's going to be a early storyline in 2026 is how are the White Sox doing defensively at the corners with Vargas at third and Murakami at first. Now, speaking of third base, and this continues to be a lingering question for the Chicago White Sox and with the World Baseball Classic guys leaving camp, James, it does return to the topic of what do the White Sox do with their home run leader from last year with Lenyn Sosa. We know he's not good defensively at second. He is worse at first base. Now it sounds like Lenyn Sosa might get some action at third base during spring. So this is another position that the White Sox are hoping that Lenyn looks better at defensively.
I think looks passable defensively is kind of the goal. He played there Tuesday in Peoria, got to start there. Of course, he hit. I think they just viewed his opportunities to play if he was just first base or second base is a little too narrow to really get kind of regular reps. And like, truthfully, especially if like Murakami is like, hey, maybe he might play third base sometimes. You know, Colson has obviously rotated there in the past. But like, who's your necessarily like primary backup to Vargas? And there's probably a little bit of more room there if Lenyn is an option. They certainly like respect the idea like he's as proven as any of their hitters based on what he did in the second half. So this probably makes it easier to squint and see him getting to like 300, 400 plate appearances or more if he kind of bashes his way to more. It's also like he played there before. He came up as a shortstop. You know, obviously he's kind of like some of what he's done to get all the power he has is he's gotten a lot thicker and thus viewing his like middle infield days feels like distant right now, but he has the hands and arm, I think, to generally play there. I don't know necessarily why they've shifted away from it so much, but it seems reasonable enough to me in terms of like what we view as physical skill set as. Obviously, like it's Lenyn Sosa. There's potential for the unexpected when you put him on the diamond in general, but I think in terms of like looking at your third base depth chart, like Miguel Vargas is kind of unproven. You know, him and Mydroth and Colson are all on this I want to play 162 games energy in spring, which is great. And Venable, you talk to him and it's more like I'm glad they're all wired that way. But also like not like we want to play Miguel Vargas 162 games. That will be a great idea that will benefit him physically and improve his performance. So it just seems like an easier way to figure like Lenyn being a regular contributor, because as much as like everyone I think is wired to look at this roster or kind of in a traditional way of like who's our starting 9, who's our starting 5, who's our 8 bullpen. I think they view it as like this with Lenyn kind of floating around. This gets us closer to the level of like legitimate depth that we need to really be a functioning team over a 6-month season, rather than like this square peg doesn't fit, let's get rid of it. I think Lenyn has some value basically doing what he did last year, which is have bat, will travel, and this is just another place he can land.
The other news for the White Sox this upcoming weekend, Jim, we're going to get a chance to finally see Noah Schultz pitch as the White Sox have some split squad action, and Schultz is scheduled to have a couple of innings, and there's been a lot about the injuries that impacted Noah Schultz last year. So I think that's one angle to look for, is how does Schultz look physically on the mound? Other than that, what are you going to be paying attention to in Noah Schultz's first appearance this spring?
Two things. One is strikes, ability to throw them. Like he lost the strike zone a lot last year, or for clumps of starts, and that hasn't been a part of his game in the past. Like what made him special was being extremely tall, but having a real good sense for repeating his mechanics and throwing strikes more frequently than you see anybody of that sort of extreme height. And he lost that last year and created a lot of his own trouble. And then, the issues against righties really were exacerbated. So that's one that I think can be seen, a couple innings at a time. The other would be sharpness on his slider. That was the other thing that really made him look ordinary, was that his slider, I think he's somebody who can get by being a sinker slider guy. Maybe he's more of an average starter. He's not an ace frontline bat misser, but gets grounders, can work both sides of the plate with it, against lefties and righties. And it's a very versatile pitch when it has that sharpness, but I think it blended into being too much of a curveball last year. He said it was trying to throw the cutter and kind of changing his hand shape a little bit and coming out weird. And, his bread and butter is sinker slider and getting that sharpness, distinct break on that slider back. So that's also something I think, although it's a desert, you should be able to see like him throwing it with intent and, getting the kind of shapes, strike grabbing, and then, pitches in the dirt. And sometimes the literal back foot slider that hits a guy in a 2-strike count, but, the intent is there. Those are the two things I'm looking for.
James, is Schultz, has he gone through like a grip change? Is there anything we should be focusing on that point? Because like to what Jim is mentioning, like the shape of his slider and the two-seamer not having a ton of effectiveness last year. Is he going to try anything else out this spring?
They haven't touted one. It was more about like feeling that the knee was the essential, what's the word I'm looking for? Original sin, source
Culprit.
I feel like they generally thought that the hand manipulation issue of the cutter was something they addressed last season and wasn't. It was more like after they addressed it and there still were problems like this was a false villain. This is the guy you think did it in the first 20 minutes of Law and Order, but in turns it's a larger issue of corruption, and that was the knee. So I don't think they view it as like, guys are like tweaking their grips in slight ways all the time. I can't rule it out, but it's not what they're touting as the big solution.
Okay. Yeah, because you got a chance to talk to Anthony Kay. And at Sox Fest, like Anthony Kay is trying to bring back his four-seamer, which when I got a chance to talk to him at Sox Fest, that was something that he didn't lean on a lot in Japan because Japanese hitters do a really good job of either making contact or fouling off pitches up in the zone. If you need to beat them, you got to beat them in the lower part, and that's where the two-seamer came into play. And it seems like Anthony Kay is another one of those lefties, James, that's like working on this two-seam, four-seam, trying to find a middle ground with both pitches.
Two-seam, four-seam, and cutter. So he's throwing you three fastball shapes.
Okay.
I mean, the basic breakdown he gave it was like, think of Japan as having kind of flat swings. So you throw the sinker that goes under it, and think of the Americans as having kind of uphill swings. So you kind of throw the four-seamer over it. He thinks the balance will shift a little because he threw all three of these like fastball shapes in Japan. He'll probably throw all three of these here. It's funny because he sat like 94, 96 the other day. So like your crafty lefties, they even throw 94, 96 nowadays. And they still have to throw three fastball shapes. I don't bet Tommy Malone throws on a game on TV and doesn't even know what he's looking at anymore. But he thinks it's more like it's going to be maybe changing the balance a little bit in response to how hitters are. And even like, I think it's something that will probably bounce around like game to game. Like if he's, facing a more contact oriented offense or a more slug oriented offense, or if he's facing like Cleveland for the fourth time and they attacked him one way in the last game and now he's going to switch it up on him. I think it more just gives him different moves to move. It's like a, Kevin McHale having a bunch of different post moves. Like it's not going to be one thing every time. It's going to be like more avenues that he can kind of escape to if they're on a certain pitch, which is kind of like the idea that a lot of pitchers are going to nowadays. Like it's a lot of what Kansas City did of just having these infinitely big arsenals, like all these different ways to kind of pivot to something that gets you just a little bit off time, a little bit weak contact. It's just kind of crazy to think that like somebody who throws 96 on the left side needs to go through these machinations, but it's what worked for him in Japan, and I imagine it's what he's going to ship to here.
I didn't know he had it in him. Hopefully that carries over to the regular season.
Said like this is a guy who's throwing the upper 90s in the winter meetings. I was like, Anthony Kay? I know he sits 94, and then I like went on like Synergy and like did like a search and like 97 above, and like a bunch of results came back, and it's like Anthony Kay throwing 99 last year, and I was like,
kilometers.
And I asked him about it, and he's like, yeah, like that's kind of something I could do if I was relieving, if I could dip into that well. I don't think I want to do that if I'm throwing like 6 innings. So it's in there apparently. Like I knew that his velocity had come back pretty good after TJ a couple of years ago, but I didn't realize it's like he's solidly built, but he's not like a big tall guy. Like it's impressive.
That's interesting. That's going to be something to watch for, Jim. Now, other than, just watching Tanner McDougal and Grant Taylor StatCast and come away like super impressed with the velocity, I guess we're going to have to watch how Anthony Kay is throwing the ball now, Jim.
Yeah, especially I think as the starts get longer, as he starts throwing every 5 days. Can he maintain that, or does he drop down to like 93, 94? And then it's a matter of, does he have the ability to sequence well enough to get away with lesser velocity? But yeah, coming out of the gates, throwing the way he did, makes sense. The contract makes sense.
Yeah, Tyler Gilbert also looked good coming out of the bullpen. 6 strikeouts already in 2 innings for Tyler Gilbert. So some, again, impressive performances by the White Sox. As I mentioned in the intro, the White Sox are having a good start to this spring training as they are 4-2 and still averaging 7 runs a game. But again, it is spring training, so we'll see what actually carries over.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
On the injury front for the Chicago White Sox, Luisangel Acuna, is he okay, James? Like, there was a mishap at second base I was reading about.
Well, he got 4 stitches on above his left eyebrow. So I would say his afternoon was subpar, but in general, I think not something that would, if it's a playoff game, does he just kind of stay in? Maybe.
Sure.
Said we're at the opposite end of the spectrum. We're in the Cactus League game. I already said he got 4 stitches. He walked off under his own power. It didn't seem like it was an issue beyond just, the laceration. I can imagine he doesn't play Thursday because of it, but maybe he wasn't going to play Thursday anyway. That's the nature of Cactus League injuries, but he should be fine. I hope it doesn't deter him from headfirst slides. Space stealing is probably going to be a lot of what his game is, but I don't know. He's safe, so it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of results. His first go around the bases. But Everson Pereira is still, last update was they're going to give him some days to calm down. They don't want to re-aggravate it. Sounds very much like what people say when they're talking about an oblique. Granted, he's been day-to-day up until this point, and they haven't put the time out longer or say this is a grade 1, grade 2 or something like that. But they clearly are slow playing him back for obviously sound reasons. It's just for someone who it's kind of an unknown commodity, or how much is this going to translate right away? It's easy to imagine being this the thing that slows him down to where you don't see him really get up and running by the time March is rolling around. And does that mean he starts the season in the IL so you can just feel like you got a full spring training out of him, so to speak? who knows? Maybe that's a convenient way for them to clear up one of their roster conundrums since he's out of options, and you're considering NRI, Jared Kelenic on top of like Brooks Baldwin and Luisangel and Austin Hayes and Andrew Benintendi hitting the crap out of the ball in February for whatever that's worth. For a 10-year vet and having really good late Februaries, I don't know if Andrew Benintendi cares, let alone if we should apply it to what the season's going to look like. But yeah, it's something to monitor for sure. And then obviously Drew Thorpe had what amounts to a setback, but it's not the setback in terms of like, man, we were expecting April 1st and now he's going to be April 22nd. It's more like, well, he just lost 3 weeks, but we don't know exactly how much that affects his, generalized timeline of somewhere around the All-Star break, hopefully. So hopefully he can still be in that range. It's more as like seeing him look good and be effective and look like he's back in sync when he does return.
And Hagen Smith, are we going to see him soon? I know they've been careful because he pitched in the Arizona Fall League.
I don't feel like he was on the most recent schedule. He threw a live at bats just on Tuesday, so he's active. He has no issues. As Bill Venable put it, Hagen would not agree to the 1 week pushback of his schedule, which they've said like is a result of him pitching the AFL if they gave him the choice. So no, he's not doing anything before Friday, but I imagine, he's been active, he's been throwing. They're going to work him in pretty soon. They already kind of explained that he's a little bit behind everyone by choice. Not his choice, but their choice.
Right. And if you didn't get a chance, podcast listeners, Jim tried to predict what the Charlotte Knights starting rotation would look like. Again, with McDougal, Schultz, and Smith, that's going to be one heck of a way to start our minor league coverage, Jim. So I hope that you are right that those three are there. What a great way for them to visit Nashville and be able to see each of them in the first 3 games of the year.
It is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than to ask a White Sox person about the Charlotte rotation without them saying, this is a good problem to have. We've had seasons where we're throwing bullpen days all the time. You can't get me to worry about this in any real way.
I said it wasn't a problem. I said, don't call it a problem. It's never a problem.
I'm just saying you can even preface the conversation. Look, I know this is not a real problem and it's a good thing, but
it's a puzzle, not a problem.
Still respond. We can only pray to have this problem. You understand, right?
Stop saying problem. Puzzle, again, not problem.
Check out Jim's attempt to figure out Charlotte's puzzle and what their starting rotation will look like to start 2026. But of course, that plays a factor when we're watching spring training games and how often we see Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, and even Tanner McDougal, which we raved about in our previous podcast episode. And again, another pitcher to watch and how they fare on StatCast. But moving away from spring training in Arizona for a quick second, on February 25th is a big day for one particular person of the Chicago White Sox. It's Jerry Reinsdorf's birthday, and the chairman turned 90 on Wednesday. And Daryl Van Schouwen came out of retirement briefly to help out with the Chicago Sun-Times, and he interviewed White Sox color analyst on the TV side, Steve Stone, to talk about Jerry Reinsdorf. And in that piece, we also learned that Steve Stone signed a new 5-year contract with the CHSN, the Chicago Sports Network, and to continue calling games with the Chicago White Sox on the television side. So he'll be entering year 2 of a 5-year contract. But Jim, Jerry Reinsdorf, 90 years old. What would you give Jerry as a birthday gift at age 90?
Nothing. He should want for nothing at this point. Seems like he values relationships, and I can't give him one of those, nor would he want. He's probably in no new friends territory anyway at this point. So, yeah, I think just it seems like all the comments, everything you hear about him, seeing him a couple times at the winter meeting, surrounded by people, like, yeah, he still seems like he's got the social aspect down, which is big for a nonagenarian, is having contacts and having people around to keep you involved and stimulated. So he seems like he's wealthy in many ways, and that's one of them, and that's probably the most important at this point. But can we talk about the story for a second?
Sure.
Well, the 5-year contract is a fascinating one because it takes Stone to 82, which is, I thought like he might want to be on a year-to-year deal or like a Tim Wakefield type deal to where like, yeah, you're good. Just let us know how many games you want to work. And if you want to keep drawing it down, generally we can keep doing that. But a 5-year deal for somebody like carrying in their 80s is something. Perhaps that's a case where CHSN really needed to have him around to, have their network launch. And so he was able to get a pretty great deal out of it. So there's that. But yeah, the kicker on it was funny, saying that talking about Stone talking about Reinsdorf, saying he's one of those guys who, if he tells you something, you don't have to wonder if it's the truth. He's incredibly loyal and respects loyalty, which is lost in this new society. A lot of younger people don't understand loyalty, nor do they care about it much. That's a problem. Not a problem that Jerry has, though. And like, sure, that's fine because they're friends. Reinsdorf has taken care of Stone, with the second act in Chicago broadcasting. Not going to bite the hand that feeds them. Like, that loyalty works. And, I can understand why that, why he's not personally bothered by, the criticisms. And it's fine for him. But earlier in the story, he's talking about the White Sox front office. And he's saying the front office right now is the strongest we've had in a long time. Chris has done a great job reconfiguring it. He actually uses the word competent to describe the front office, which is like, well, if you're using competent as a compliment now, then what was the previous front office? And why was that previous front office allowed to rot so long? Loyalty. Like just, so it's a case of, you can understand why fans aren't enamored with Reinsdorf's brand of loyalty if it just engenders mediocrity or worse in the case of the way the White Sox fell apart. So, I thought it was just one of those interesting juxtapositions. But, when it comes to Stone having a 5-year contract, it makes me wonder, it turned this into Schriffen minutes. I think Schriffen's up at the end of this year. So Schriffen got 3 years, Stone got 5. In order for Stone, I think, to be somebody who still has his fastball or a fastball, like in his 80s, like he does need a broadcaster who challenges him. Somebody who gets him to dig deeper into his knowledge. Because I think we saw with Schriffen as he got better at calling a game, managing a baseball broadcast, that Stone backed off and didn't really have that much to contribute. And a lot of shorter answers, kind of shallower on insights. Because he had Connor McKnight, he had Brooke Fletcher, weaving those stories in. And so he did less, but also just a lot of information was just kind of lacking. And I think with Connor McKnight in there, who knows a little bit more about the modern game, I think he's just more of a, somebody who likes reading about this stuff. Like that was Jason Benetti's strong suit, was like having this knowledge, and he would broach some topics in terms of, I've never played the game, but they're saying this. And he would stick to his guns and not be afraid to be called wrong by Stone 1 point longer than maybe others would. And you'd get like a good discussion out of that. You get like Stone having to defend something or having to accept, cede some modern points. And I thought that's what made that broadcast really special. And when Stone doesn't have that foil of just somebody who can have some confidence in a modern analytical approach to the game, you don't get the best Stone. So I am curious if, they do, whether it's, Schriffen stays or whether he goes, they do have to consider like, what do we want our broadcast to be? I really hope they consider that aspect because, when Stone has somebody who isn't afraid, not necessarily call him wrong, but offer a conflicting point of view and say, how do you defend against this? There's a lot more nuance, a lot more depth, and a lot more that's brought up over the course of a broadcast. And to me, beyond, all the other awkwardness of the Schriffen, whether his style is my style, like that notwithstanding, just the lesser Stone, I think, is maybe the biggest drawback of moving on from Benetti. And that's a case where like, loyalty, I think that's why Stone wasn't all that broken up about Benetti moving on, because like loyalty, Stone has it, maybe didn't think that Benetti had it. And so he's just like, well, you're missing out on something good here. But yeah, I think Stone is set. He's fine. But I think if they're going to get his best version, they need a broadcaster who makes him a little bit, just slightly unsettled to make him have to dig deeper.
And you don't think that will be John in year 3?
We'll see. I mean, it could be a case where, they keep bringing in Connor McKnight more. I'm also curious, like if the White Sox are more competitive, how does that change the topics broached in the broadcast? Part of the reason why I think Schriffin's knowledge has been, or his lack of being conversational about baseball or conversant about baseball has been exposed because there's so many lopsided games that you just need to talk about something else and like fill time with talking about stuff around the league or something you read. And he didn't have that to offer. So there's just a lot more forced optimism in place of that. So perhaps with the White Sox, if their vision comes to fruition of being a team that can actually keep everybody in the American League honest and you're playing more competitive games, perhaps that becomes less noticeable. And now it's just more a matter of like having exciting action to talk about. So perhaps, the White Sox will accept some of the burden off Schriffen and make it about them.
I think we could all enjoy some quality White Sox baseball to make it easier for everybody to watch this, because it's been more than 300 losses the last 3 years. But happy birthday, Jerry, turning 90. I am sure the comments section on the podcast post is going to be very friendly for me wishing the chairman a happy birthday. But I looked at my Ancestry.com family tree. I have not had one family member live to be 90 years old. Maybe I'll break that streak. Probably not. But congrats on reaching 90.
I thought the more shocking reveal was coming. Like, I looked at my Ancestry.com and
Jerry Reinsdorf's a relative.
like, happy birthday, cousin.
How do I? Yeah, I'm saying happy birthday to get in the will.
Right?
Give me a steak.
Give me, no kidding. Save me a spot, Justin.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
And then our final topic in this podcast episode, a huge thank you to all of our subscribers and supporters at Sox Machine. Without your guys' support, we wouldn't be able to send James down to Arizona, and James is returning home from spring training this upcoming weekend. So again, thank you guys for your support for us to be able to send James down to camp and cover spring training for us. James, as you are leaving White Sox camp, what's your big takeaway after watching all the coaches and players and getting a chance to almost talk to everybody at camp for this upcoming season?
If I could glom on to what you said, well, one, thanks of all to, our supporters, but also, like, I know there are kind of larger structural wants we want to have for Sox Machine as an institution about recognition and access. But as far as like the day-to-day operations, like, a huge thank you to like White Sox PR and like really like baseball operations and the way that like our sort of inquiries were received and treated and like prioritized. Like, we got like we got a one-on-one with Munetaka Murakami. I think the general way that like people like Brian Bannister and Ryan Fuller are not just like willing to accommodate our lines of inquiry, but like enthusiastic about it. And I think that spreads on to like other people in the coaching staff. Certainly I think, the front office does a pretty good job of being accessible or being open to like what we're saying. Certainly player development, given the level of coverage we do with the minor leagues, like they've been really receptive. Paul Jonas and his crew have been like very much like whatever you need, reach out for information. So like, I think like what this type of stories that Sox Machine tells, they were very enthusiastic to accommodate throughout the spring. And so like, this was a very fulfilling trip for me, which obviously thank you to our supporters for making it possible. But part of it was just like how much it seemed like our work was treated as like legitimate and having value. Len Casper, inviting him in the booth, like Darren Jackson was very unbelievably respectful, I guess. Just like the way that we were treated, I felt was very heartening. But so to move on to the good vibes of White Sox camp, yeah, they're very happy. You see how a lot of it reminds me a lot of the 2019 White Sox, which had a lot of core players kind of coming to their own. Like that's the season Yoan Moncada puts up like a 6-win season. Lucas Giolito like breaks out. Tim Anderson wins a batting title. Jose Abreu's really good. Eloy Jimenez debuts. Luis Robert goes nuts in the minors. Like it's a season that like very much like obviously they still lost a lot of games. And they're like projects that went haywire. Like Ronaldo Lopez probably doesn't love 2019, but that was like you can see the vision starting to come together season. And I feel like this is a little bit similar with feeling like, all right, we got Shane Smith and Colson Montgomery in place. We feel like these are core pieces. We feel like we're making this transition where there's a lot of like second or third year players that are clubhouse leaders now. Miguel Vargas, like Davis Martin, these guys are like really trusted voices that like have taken on ownership. We don't have to like necessarily bring in this like outside vet to corral the rookies, but we're seeing them kind of come into their own. Like it's funny, like with talking to Austin Hayes this spring about like, hey, you kind of thought like because when he signed, he said like this feels like Cincinnati where it's a young team and I'm being brought in as a veteran. Hopefully we make a leap together. And I was like, oh, does this feel like Cincinnati or does this feel like how are you trying to like be a mentor? And he's like, we'll see, man. But they seem like they run themselves. Like nothing's come up that I need to issue. Like all these guys are working hard. I don't need to like crack the whip or anything. So anybody got any questions? That's cool. But like I haven't taken charge here. They're already in charge of themselves. So that kind of the cohesiveness that they are touting, like we're in February. We'll see how it goes. Maybe they're choking each other in late April because they've lost 10 in a row. All this stuff sounds good and positive and smiley here, but you do have a kind of a test case of them welcoming in Murakami and like all the things that they do to try to like bring in a new player are kind of on the surface in the way that they wouldn't be otherwise. And it's like Murakami just telling the Japanese media how nice everyone is being to him like 3 times a day is kind of, and identifying these different characters that like you maybe I wouldn't even know how vocal they were from dealing with the clubhouse. Like there are some guys who, like media kind of tells are pretty vocal, like a Davis Martin type. I don't know if we would have known how much like Chase Mydroth is like taking charge and welcoming someone like Murakami and making them part of everything. If not for Murakami saying Chase Mydroth is learning 1 word of Japanese a day from me. Like he's more of a quieter guy. So at least from like this outside perspective, it feels like a very warm atmosphere. That said, when I compare them to the 2019 White Sox, I look back on that kind of unfortunately because I think that was probably the happiest that core ever was. Like the 2020 team, like as much as they were excited to like be on the come up, there were already kind of issues there. And then the 2021 team was like kind of a slog to get through a lot of the ways and like all the different issues they were dealing with. So I think when the vibe, it can be easy at this stage of like rebuild of like, hey, we're coming out of just getting our heads kicked in all the time. We can see the signs, we can see the direction we're going. That can often be like the happiest moment because then like it's kind of the middle ground before things start getting really hard, even if you are a good team. So this is like the prime moment to get sucked in, like good feelings. We're going to be friends forever. I'll write you every day when we get home from summer camp type of like mood, but the rubber hasn't really met the road yet. And maybe it doesn't even meet the road until, years where they're actually expected to win the division coming into camp. And that's an expert standard everyone's got to, hew to. Like, whereas if this team's win 75 games, it'll probably be a party all year. I'll have a blast. Most likely the bar isn't super high for them to be like, hey, we're continuing to move in the right direction. So I wouldn't say like to White Sox fans, enjoy it now while it lasts, because this team is like still projected to be 4th or 5th place. But it is like a time where you can get sucked in, but they're doing everything they should.
That's why what interesting to have Chris Getz on hand, somebody who was, third in command, maybe fourth in command, whatever you want to call it, and seeing how that team went from being enjoyable and enjoying the game to being ground down by it, and what additions or what shortcomings kind of exacerbated that. Perhaps it's a case of he might be able to see it coming. On the other hand, that was one of the things I remember going through during that second Rick Hahn rebuild is tearing it down completely, really adhering to a farm system and not being pressured to call up guys and thinking like, well, if these guys hate each other, they'll do it in the minor leagues. They'll get all sorted out then, versus coming up to the majors, and kind of worked. But then they ran the same problem just when it came time to add veterans. At the end of the unraveling, or as everything started to come apart, like those veterans were kind of pointed to as sources of, if not malcontents themselves, at least kind of central figures in discontent or checked out or being ready to go somewhere else. And even like, just thinking about like Liam Hendricks, positive force, but then like, seeing that, he and Joe Kelly and Kendall Graveman and just whoever else did not like him, and just thinking like, well, even trying to add happy guys does not necessarily engender happiness. So when it comes point to adding veterans, and veterans on meaningful deals, not guys who are just, they have to play nice because this could be their last major league job if things don't go well. That might be what the next step and then next point in roster building, to find out if the White Sox have done it differently, or if Will Venable and Shane Smith or Mydroth, whoever is looked at as like the tone setters in the clubhouse, if they really do have that that gravitas that the younger guys never seem to, at least the one, whatever they had wasn't impervious to fractures.
If the 2026 White Sox are like the 2019 White Sox, James, I just looked off to the side in Baseball Reference because I had to remind myself, entering 4th of July weekend in 2019, the Chicago White Sox were 41-42.
Oh, I remember.
If the White Sox in 2026 are 41-42 in Cleveland on 4th of July, when America is celebrating its 250th birthday, knowing that the All-Star break is coming up, knowing that the White Sox are probably taking Rock Chalowski first overall, it is going to be an incredibly happy time, the happiest maybe a fan base can be in Major League Baseball, for a team that is still hovering around 500. Like, it would feel like a huge celebration in the South Side, from experiencing 121 losses in 2024, and then a season and a half later, if they can duplicate what they did in 2019 and be around 500 entering July, I think every White Sox fan would take that. So let's make that happen, James. Let's speak that into existence.
I remember the last one, like Eloy hit like a ball into space as they beat like the Yankees in a series to get to 500. People were not rational. The Rick Hahn like gifs and memes that were going around were, something that no one on any side of the situation wants to revisit. It's add Chalowski into the mix. It would be a mess. We should almost sign a pact to like not discuss anything that happens that month. Like it's just it's like Carnival or something where you just like, it happens and you don't discuss it again. Like that would be how people would have to, after the horrors these people are witnessing. Like,
I think the White Sox fans deserve it, right? I think even for us covering this team, we deserves to cover a 500 team.
You don't like make someone who's been held starving for 2 months like eat a full like Thanksgiving dinner. Their stomachs would explode. Like it's about safety, Josh.
This is why Getz is smart to have like one verbal foible like a month just to keep everybody in check. Like, can't trust him.
Like, hey,
like we can't have the memes.
I'm a normal man. Please deify me.
It's all coming together. This is why he does it. I get it now.
But does that make him more of a brilliant genius?
Like Kaiser Soze, just the limp straightens out.
Yeah. Well, James, you did an awesome job. So thank you so much, especially as far as the video. And thank you to everyone that's been watching our videos over at youtube.com/SoxMachine. We'll continue on that front as well, going even into the regular season, as we got a special little camera that James can now take with him to the ballparks when he's covering the White Sox during the regular season. So we'll have that additional multimedia coverage as well. But James crushed it. There'll be a lot more stories coming from James from spring training. I think you just got a chance to, you mentioned you got a chance to chat with Chris Getz, so that'll be an upcoming feature.
Well, our readers kind of love the note, or at least the commenters. Maybe the silent majority hates it, but the kind of note format, and it allows, like, because you kind of talk, you wind up having a lot of different conversations, interviews over the course of like a normal day. It allows it to like cram more of it in that might otherwise get lost. So as a result, there's a lot of like feature or longer stories like we haven't really like written up yet, even though they're short. So talking to Getz and a lot of other people in the front office about kind of long-term vision of the org, talking about the clubhouse culture the way we did just now. Talking to Tanner McDougal for 15 minutes at Sox Fest. We still haven't written up in some way. We got to do it at some point because he's throwing 100 miles an hour. There's a lot of material that we have. Talked to Christian Opper yesterday. So there's a lot of material to still to kind of run through upon returning. I still have to work, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, and a great reason why, if you are not currently subscribed to us at SoxMachine.com, you should do so you get a chance to read all of the coverage and all the interviews that James was able to get at spring training. You can sign up at SoxMachine.com/products. And again, a huge thank you to our supporters. Not only did you help support James, but I'll be heading down to Texas to meet with Rock Chalowski and see him in person, and also get a chance to watch Grady Emerson as well. So that really gives us a boost in the MLB draft coverage. And Jim gets to go all over the area in the Southeast to watch the White Sox minor league. So we are doing the best job that we can as us three being an independent outlet for the Chicago White Sox to give you guys the coverage that you deserve as White Sox fans. So again, huge thank you. And to those that don't subscribe but still listen to the podcast and watch our videos on YouTube, again, thank you so much for doing so. And that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also watch our videos. There'll be more videos coming from us from Arizona in spring training. Also this weekend, videos from Texas concerning the MLB draft. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. We are over on Blue Sky. You can follow us there at SoxMachine.com. James is JRFegan.SoxMachine.com, and I am Josh.SoxMachine.com. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margalus and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.